This is Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa. The story of resurgent and burgeoning Africa is here, only on the Pulse of Africa channel. Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa.
Welcome to Ethiopia, your second home. As you gather for the 48th Ordinary Session of the Executive Council and the 39th Ordinary Session of the AU Assembly, the vibrant city of Addis Ababa opens its arms to you. This year, leaders from across the continent unite under the powerful theme, assuring sustainable water availability and safe sanitation systems to achieve the goals of Agenda 2063. Together, we embark on a journey of meaningful discourse and shared visions for a brighter future. But it's not just about discussions within these esteemed halls. As you can see, the streets of Addis Ababa are alive with transformation, all ready to welcome you. Don't miss the iconic Adwa Victory Memorial, a symbol of resilience and pride commemorating Africa's triumph over colonialism. It stands as a testament to the determination of a people ready to defend their sovereignty. Once again, a very warm welcome to Addis Ababa, a city in motion and a destination that feels like home. Together, let's shape the future. Hello and welcome. I'm Edo Masai and this is Pulse of Africa News, coming to you live from Addis Ababa, the political heart of Africa. We'll be bringing you the latest updates and stories related to the Italy Africa Summit and African Union Summit. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed delivered a landmark speech at the second Italy Africa Summit, emphasizing the need to move from dialogue to action in Africa-Europe relations. Addressing the summit, Prime Minister called on leaders to turn ideas into tangible outcomes that improve the lives of citizens across the continent. Abiy highlighted Ethiopia's role as Africa's diplomatic capital, a hub for trade, logistics, aviation, and global conferences, noting that the country is increasingly connecting Africa to the world. Our greatest asset is our people, he said, stressing the importance of investing in youth, skills, and technology, particularly artificial intelligence, to drive innovation, create jobs, and modernize energy, food systems, health, and public services. The Prime Minister underlined the significance of the Matei Plan, which integrates energy security, sustainable development, migration, management, and human capital development. He noted that the plan aligns closely with Ethiopia's economic reform agenda, including renewable energy, smart agriculture, infrastructure, digital transformation, and regional connectivity projects such as rail aviation and innovation hubs. By combining Africa's energetic and creative population with Europe's technology experience and capital, we can build solutions that deliver prosperity across our continents, Abiy said. He reaffirmed Ethiopia's commitment to turning words into action, ensuring tangible benefits for its people and deepening strategic cooperation with Italy and African partners. Italy's Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, on her part, emphasized the country's commitment to social development and collaborative governance. She focused on energy interconnection across the Mediterranean, renewable energy and biofuels, water access, infrastructure, and support for local businesses to create quality jobs. Prime Minister Meloni emphasized the importance of shared growth between Italy and Africa, highlighting key areas such as energy interconnection across the Mediterranean, investment in renewable energy and biofuels, and support for local businesses that create quality jobs. She also stressed the significance of technological innovations and improving access to water as part of Italy's broader development strategy. Meloni pointed to strengthen cooperation in infrastructure as a cornerstone for sustainable development, both physical and digital, across multiple African regions. Without connections, there is no growth, and integration with global markets is impossible, she noted, underscoring the role of connectivity in economic progress. The Prime Minister also highlighted initiatives in healthcare, industry, and employment, with a focus on empowering young people and fostering private sector development. She noted that all projects under the Mateo Plan share a common goal: creating inclusive, long-term growth that benefits communities on both sides of the Mediterranean. The summit in Addis Ababa underscores the growing partnership between Africa and Europe, with both leaders calling for actionable strategies to foster sustainable development, economic integration, and innovation across the continents. Heads of state and government from across the continent are arriving in Addis Ababa, the diplomatic capital and heart of Africa, to participate in the African Union Summit. The Ethiopian capital, which hosts the headquarters of the African Union, has once again become the center of continental decision-making as leaders gather to address Africa's most pressing political, security, and development priorities. The summit follows the 48th ordinary session of the Executive Council and the culminate in the 39th ordinary session of the Assembly of Heads of State and Government, taking place from 14 to 15 February 2026 at the AU headquarters. Addis Ababa is wearing a renewed look as it welcomes delegations for the high-level gathering. Key discussions are expected to focus on strengthening peace and security, accelerating the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, advancing institutional reforms, and mobilizing sustainable financing for Africa's development agenda. This year's theme on water and sanitation will also feature prominently as leaders seek practical solutions to expand access, enhance climate resilience, and promote inclusive growth. Delegates are expected to remain in the city through Sunday for high-level deliberations, bilateral engagements, and related summit activities. As strategic consultations intensify, Addis Ababa once again stands at the center of Africa's collective diplomacy, with expectations high for decisive outcomes that will shape the continent's future trajectory. Zimbabwe reaffirms commitment to Africa's self-financing and sovereignty. Zimbabwe's Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, Professor Amon Murwira, urged to strengthen Africa's sovereignty and self-determination following the 48th ordinary session of the African Union Executive Council held in Africa. Speaking at the high-level meeting, Professor Murwira emphasized Zimbabwe's position that the African Union Commission must be primarily financed by its member states. He stressed that Africa must fund its own development agenda to safeguard its sovereignty and accelerate economic integration. Currently, more than 70% of the African Union's budget is supported by external partners, a situation Zimbabwe believes must change to ensure the continent maintains full control over its priorities and strategic direction.
AUC must get most of its budget from member states because at this moment, more than 70% of the budget is coming from partners. But the African Union Commission, or the African Union itself, was formed to safeguard the sovereignty and economic integration of Africa. It therefore means that Africa must take most of the burden so that we control our agenda. So the most important issue is that member states must contribute more to the survival of our union so that we are able to actually be in control of our agenda.
The minister also announced a diplomatic milestone for Zimbabwe as Ms. Anne Musiwa was re-elected after securing 45 out of 48 votes, reflecting strong regional backing from Southern Africa. The outcome aligns with Zimbabwe's broader foreign policy objective of positioning its nationals in influential continental and global roles. During the session, the Executive Council reviewed updates on the African Union's participation in the G20, commending South Africa for its leadership in facilitating the AU's inclusion and Angola for its stewardship as chair.
We commended the African Union Commission, particularly the Republic of South Africa, for facilitating the issue of the African Union Commission being part of the G20. And we really, Executive Council, thanked the Republic of South Africa for a sterling job that they have done. We've also commended the work that has been done, or that is being done by Angola as our chair of the AUC.
As preparations continue for the upcoming Assembly of Heads of State and Government, Professor Murira underscored that the Council's work remains anchored in a shared commitment to Africa's dignity, unity, and long-term vision.
The African Union prioritized peace and security through mediation, negotiation, and Peace and Security Council. It works to prevent conflict and to address root causes for the lasting stability across the continent. Progress in regional cooperation and conflict prevention both support the broader development growth across our continent. These efforts strengthen our resilience and pave the way for sovereignty across the continent. And all African leaders will be focusing to reinforce these mechanisms on the 39th session of the African Union Assembly from February 14th to 15th, 2026, right here in Addis Ababa. And we, Pulse of Africa, will be your trusted media platform where you get all information across the continent. Make sure to stay tuned.
If you don't tell your story, it will be told by others. They'll talk of hunger, they'll talk of war, they'll talk of conflict, but they'll not say the things that are happening in Africa that are positive.
This is POA, a very new media organization in Ethiopia.
We have to be voice for ourselves. There's no one else that can tell our story better than us.
If it's defending African matters, then go for it. Go for Pulse Media.
This is the Pulse of Africa. Tune in, follow the journey, and learn about the news and what's shaping our African continent.
I am really impressed by the work that they're doing by telling the African story from Africa for Africans. I think it's definitely needed.
Please subscribe to the Pulse of Africa on all platforms.
In other news, Foreign Minister Gideon Timotheus hosted a productive breakfast meeting on Friday with foreign ministers from the ratifying states of the Agreement on the Nile River Basin Cooperative Framework, CFA. The gathering brought together foreign ministers from Ethiopia, Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda, Burundi, and South Sudan. Discussions centered on practical steps to expedite the full operationalization of the agreement and the establishment of the Nile River Basin Commission, NRBC. The ministers reaffirmed their shared commitment to the principles of equitable and reasonable utilization of Nile waters as enshrined in the CFA. They underscored that cooperation remains to be a necessity to ensure an equitable and reasonable management and utilization of this shared water resource. Furthermore, the meeting highlighted progresses achieved since the entry into the force of the CFA and expressed their commitment to ensure the successful completion of the formation of institutional setup. Rwandan Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Oliver Jean-Patrick Nduhungirehe, has urged African countries to enhance cooperation in managing and utilizing water resources to boost their economies and achieve sustainable development. In an inclusive interview with Pulse of Africa, the minister emphasized the significance of this year's African Union theme, assuring sustainable water availability and safe sanitation systems to achieve the goals of Agenda 2063. He described the theme as crucial for uniting African nations to develop effective policies and strategies that improve water accessibility across the continent.
Water and sanitation, because for Africa, for the AU member states, we have seen that it's an issue for our development, having access to water for the whole population and sanitation for everyone. So it's good that the African Union has chosen this theme so that we can work together and put in place a policy and strategy and to ensure that we Africans move together, ensure of the well-being of our population, including through access to water.
Minister Nduhungirehe stressed that Africa cannot continue relying solely on rainwater, as dependence on rainfall exposes many regions to the risks of drought and climate variability. He called for better management of water resources and the exploration of alternative sources to support agriculture, which he identified as a key driver of development. By creating a conducive environment for farming through reliable water access, countries can accelerate economic progress. The minister also advocated harnessing water for energy production, while encouraging diversification of energy sources, including wind, geothermal, and solar, to build resilient power systems. Highlighting Ethiopia's rapid transformations in agriculture, energy, and industry, he praised the country as an inspiring example for other African nations to emulate in achieving fast-paced progress. Nduhungirehe further emphasized the importance of sharing experiences and best practices among African countries to realize the vision of the Africa we want, a continent that is developed and self-reliant on its own resources. As a member of the Nile Basin Initiative, Rwanda has signed and ratified the Comprehensive Framework Agreement on the Nile. The minister reiterated that cooperation is essential for the equitable and sustainable use of shared water resources.
Of course, cooperation is key. The cooperation is important between African countries. We are also member of the Nile River Basin Initiative. We have signed and ratified the Comprehensive Framework Agreement. We believe that it's important for African countries to continue on this path of cooperation, on discussion, in order to bring everyone on board, to share our resources, to ensure that those resources are benefiting our economies.
Welcome to Ethiopia, your second home. As you gather for the 48th Ordinary Session of the Executive Council and the 39th Ordinary Session of the AU Assembly, the vibrant city of Addis Ababa opens its arms to you. This year, leaders from across the continent unite under the powerful theme, assuring sustainable water availability and safe sanitation systems to achieve the goals of Agenda 2063. Together, we embark on a journey of meaningful discourse and shared visions for a brighter future. But it's not just about discussions within these esteemed halls. As you can see, the streets of Addis Ababa are alive with transformation, all ready to welcome you. Don't miss the iconic Adwa Victory Memorial, a symbol of resilience and pride commemorating Africa's triumph over colonialism. It stands as a testament to the determination of a people ready to defend their sovereignty. Once again, a very warm welcome to Addis Ababa, a city in motion and a destination that feels like home. Together, let's shape the future.
Josepha Leonel Correa Sacco, former Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy and Sustainable Environment, has called on African governments to intensify unity, protect natural resources, and fast-track sustainable development across the continent. Speaking to POA, Sacco emphasized that water remains the foundation of life, food production, and Africa's long-term survival. She warned that climate change, coupled with recurring droughts, is placing unprecedented pressure on the continent's water systems and agricultural productivity. To confront these challenges, she urged African countries to adopt climate-resilient and adaptive technologies that can safeguard water resources, boost agricultural output, and protect rural livelihoods.
It is important for us to keep our natural resources. It's a very important source because it's through water we have food, we feed, we do everything industry. So it's good that with the impact of the climate change, because of the drought, because of the drought, the drought. So we need to really preserve our water. So we know that climate change is really affecting. So we need to look at technology, adapted technology that are resilient, resilient to this impact of climate change.
She highlighted Agenda 2063, Africa's long-term development blueprint, as the continent's primary transformation framework. According to SACO, aligning national development plans with continental priorities, particularly in agriculture, health, education, and industrialization, is critical. She stressed that strong planning, accountability, and effective monitoring mechanisms are essential to achieving sustainable and resilient growth. On economic integration, SACO underscored the strategic importance of the African Continental Free Trade Area, noting that deeper intra-African trade can accelerate job creation, reduce dependence on imports, and significantly cut poverty levels.
When you want to improve or develop, go through resilient development and sustainable, you need to plan. And this planning is through those pillars that we have here. We have our strategies, we have our projects, we have our agencies. So I think we are well structured to really reach all the objectives we set to ourselves. Like now we have the IFCFTA, the zone of free trade area. It's very important for us to develop, to strengthen the intra-African trade amongst ourselves. It's very important because it will create jobs, we will reduce importation, and we will reduce also poverty.
Addressing the shifting global geopolitical landscape, she urged African leaders to take full ownership of the continent's future. Africa has the resources, she said, adding that with unity, good governance, and sustained investment in human capital, the continent can achieve true food sovereignty and feed itself sustainably. Ethiopia is taking an active and strategic role in coordinating African Union member states to advance the continent's development agenda, while also safeguarding its national interests. Minister of Foreign Affairs spokesperson Ambassador Nabia Getachew has said. The spokesperson stated that the outcomes of the 48th ordinary session of the AU Executive Council, which concluded on Thursday ahead of the 39th AU Heads of State and Government Summit set for February 14 to 15, 2026 in Addis Ababa. Ambassador Nabia said that the Executive Council concluded its work successfully, holding extensive deliberations on key continental and global issues, including climate change, access to finance, and Africa's equitable representation within the United Nations system. He emphasized that in a rapidly evolving global landscape, Africa can effectively safeguard its interests only by speaking with a unified voice. At this summit, Ethiopia is not only protecting its national interests, but also playing a leading role in coordinating member states toward the realization of Agenda 2063, he said, referring to the AU's long-term strategic framework for inclusive growth and sustainable development. The ambassador noted that Ethiopia is advancing a diplomatic position centered on water for development, regional cooperation, and shared prosperity. Bilateral discussions are also being conducted on the sidelines of the summit to strengthen partnerships and build consensus on strategic priorities. Peace and security issues featured prominently during the Council's session, particularly developments in neighboring Somalia and Sudan. Member states stressed the need for coordinated efforts to counter the threat posed by Al-Shabaab and to promote stability in the region. Ethiopia highlighted its extensive experience in regional peacekeeping and reiterated its call for collective responsibility among member states in addressing security challenges. Ambassador Nabiat also underscored Ethiopia's comprehensive preparations to host the summit. He noted that ongoing urban transformation and beautification initiatives in Addis Ababa have drawn positive attention from visiting delegates. According to the spokesperson, many participants expressed admiration for the city's rapid development and showed interest in learning from Ethiopia's experience. The 39th AU Summit is expected to address pressing continental priorities and further strengthen Africa's collective voice on the global stage. Senegal's Minister of African Integration and Foreign Affairs, Cheikh Niang, has called for intensified South-South cooperation and African-led innovation to tackle the continent's deepening water and sanitation crisis. Speaking at a high-level side event on water and sanitation held on the margins of the African Union Summit, Niang stressed that Africa is facing water challenges of unprecedented magnitude, with nearly 40% of the population lacking access to safe drinking water and more than 70% without basic sanitation services. He warned that poor sanitation weakens health systems, worsens food insecurity, fuels poverty, and undermines social and economic stability across the continent. Climate change, rapid urbanization, prolonged droughts, floods, and increasing water stress are further compounding the crisis. For Africa, this is no longer a sectoral issue, but a vital emergency at the heart of human security, peace, and sustainable development, Niang said.
In addition to the structural challenges, there are the effects of climate change, including increasing water stress, prolonged droughts, recurrent floods, in addition to the increased pressure related to rapid urbanization. For Africa, this is no longer a sectorial issue, but a vital emergency at the heart of human security, peace, and sustainable development. Dear friends, the response to this crisis necessarily requires a qualitative leap in investment. However, it is clear that the financing deficit remains one of the main obstacles to the sustainable transformation of the sector. And here I would like to really concur with the chairperson when he advocated that Africans must make the efforts first before having others to come to assist us.
The minister emphasized that closing the financing gap remains one of the biggest obstacles to transforming the sector. Echoing calls for greater African ownership, he urged the continent to mobilize domestic resources and embrace innovation before seeking external support. Niang highlighted Morocco's experience as a reference point for Africa, citing advances in seawater desalination powered by sustainable energy, groundwater management through water table contracts, and flood early warning systems.
The Kingdom of Morocco is a major reference on our continent. We note with great satisfaction the remarkable progress made in the field of non-conventional water, in particular the desalination of seawater to cope with the structural scarcity of water based on strategic control of the energy segment, a guarantee of long-term water safety. We also welcome the sustainable groundwater resource management model with water table contracts, the development of early warning systems for flood management, as well as Morocco's international leadership through the presidency of the International Network of Basin Organizations, and the hosting of the Congress of the International Water Resources Association last December in Marrakesh, whose conclusions usefully nourished the high-level preparatory meeting held at the United Nations Water Conference in Dakar last January.
Looking ahead, Niang described 2026, declared the Year of Water in Africa as a pivotal moment. Senegal, alongside with the United Arab Emirates, will co-organize the UN Water Conference, providing what he called a historic opportunity for Africa to speak with a unified and credible voice on the global stage. He concluded by reaffirming Senegal's commitment to working with African states, partners, and civil society to ensure that water becomes a factor of unity rather than division. African Union Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy and Sustainable Environment, Moses Vilakari, has expressed appreciation for Ethiopia's development progress and digital transformation efforts. Vilakari also gave a detailed briefing on the theme of 2025, the Kampala CAADP Domestication Guidelines and Digital Agriculture, noting their importance for agricultural development and youth engagement. Answering questions raised by journalists at a media briefing on the sidelines of the AU summit, Bilakari said that the African Union is grateful to be hosted in Addis Ababa, describing it as a rapidly developing city.
We are very, very grateful for SAUC that we are located in this beautiful city of Addis Ababa, a city that is developing every day. You know, if you are away for 1 year, you get lost in this city. But also we're very grateful for what, you know, Ethiopia has done, particularly in its development agenda. I will combine that with the wheat one. The digital transformation that it has done. I was really amazed when I went to the, I think it's Ministry of Skills and Labor, where they were showing me the skills development that is obtaining in Ethiopia, as well as the digital transformation that is there. We really are excited as the AUC because it can easily be now transferred to other member states.
The Commissioner also acknowledged Ethiopia's development agenda, particularly mentioning progress in wheat production and digital transformation. He said he was impressed during his visit to the Ministry of Labour and Skills, where he observed ongoing skills, development initiatives, and digital transformation efforts. Bilakati noted that the African Union Commission is fully supportive of Ethiopia's innovations and technologies and is ready to share successful experiences with other member states.
We're fully in support of what is happening. With us as the AUC, if we find a particular technology or innovation, we then share it with all the member states. Fortunately, I was very also excited when I met the Prime Minister, who eloquently said to me, all the technology that is here in Ethiopia, please share it with member states. And we will soon be doing that. In particular, because digital transformation, particularly the AI that you're about, is the in thing. It's for the youth.
The Commissioner emphasized that digital transformation, particularly artificial intelligence, presents significant opportunities for youth, especially in agriculture, where many young people are reluctant to engage due to the labor-intensive nature of traditional farming methods. He indicated that digital transformation could help modernize agriculture and make it more active to young people. Thank you for joining us on Pulse of Africa News for our special coverage of the AU Summit and other important issues. Stay tuned for more updates and in-depth reports from this summit and stories shaping Africa. Until next time, goodbye.
I love to tell stories about the continent. I'm actually the foreign affairs correspondent for TV3, so issues about Ghana.
Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was not only the son of Ghana.
And it is because of the kind of legacy he left. He is remembered for having fought for independence. He led the struggle, was able to get independence for Ghana.
They couldn't realize the kind of prosperity and economic independence.
You are in leadership. You need to bring development and help the people progress. But when the people feel they are not getting that or their lives are not changing,
a kind of coup and undemocratic change of government.
The African Union has done more talking than taking action.
What makes Ghana such a stable country while many of its neighbors are grappling with kinds of coup and insecurity? The 2026 African Union Summit is being held under the theme Assuring Sustainable Water Availability and Safe Sanitation Systems to Achieve the goals of Agenda 2063. Well, this is one of the most dedicated conference and summit that bring together African heads of states and governments here in Addis Ababa, where the African Union headquarters is located. And many journalists from different parts of Africa come to cover this important continental summit. And today, I'm very much honored and privileged to be joined by a seasoned journalist from Ghana, West Africa. Do stay with us. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you are working?
Well, my name is Martin Asiedu Date from Accra, Ghana. I am a broadcast journalist. I work for online and then the digital space as well with a media house called TV3. It's the largest private media in Ghana. And I love to tell stories about the continent. I'm actually the foreign affairs correspondent for TV3, so issues about Ghana, the West African sub-region, the continent, and then even global multilateral institutions are stories I like to work on. So that's one of the reasons why I'm in Addis Ababa today.
A very warm welcome to your first home, not your second home. Ethiopia is, the cradle of humankind. You are from Ghana, from the country of Kwame Nkrumah, and we remember Kwame Nkrumah for his sacrifice and for his commitment toward the independence and sovereignty of Ghana. How do you remember Kwame Nkrumah?
As a student of politics, one of the names you will hear first is Kwame Nkrumah. I have met a number of journalists from around the world, and the first name they mention to you when they want to talk about Ghana or Africa is Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. And it is because of the kind of legacy he left. He is remembered for having fought for independence. He led the struggle, was able to get independence for Ghana, and wanted to start a revolution which will liberate all the other African countries, to get independence. He started. He couldn't go as far as he would have wished, but an unfortunate problem we are witnessing now in Africa, which is coup, was one of the things that threw out Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. He was ousted by a coup when he left Ghana for a mission in China. By the time he arrived in China, a coup had taken place, and then he was no more the president. And from records and history, you could tell that he was extremely disappointed that the ideas he had, he couldn't achieve. So we celebrate him very much in Ghana. His birthday, which is the 21st of September, is actually a day that we commemorate in Ghana. So he's no meaner person, not even just for Ghana, but for the continent. And other African countries remember him very much as well.
Absolutely. Kwame Nkrumah, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, was not only the son of Ghana, he was in fact the son of Africa. He was the major proponent of African unity. Back in the days, he was known for his inspirational speech toward African unity, and we do appreciate his contribution for African liberation, for African independence, and for being the voice of Africa. And you talk about coup and undemocratic change of government. We will talk a little bit in depth about coup and undemocratic change of government later in our discussion, in our interview. But for now, as you rightly said, our forefathers like Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, and other forefathers, African forefathers, were very much successful in liberating their respective countries from yokes of colonization and subjugation, external domination and subjugation. But they couldn't realize the kind of prosperity and economic independence that people of Africa are aspiring for. So why Africans fail to ensure their economic independence?
Yes, so there clearly is a link between economic development and political freedom. So yes, there was freedom for some of the countries, the African countries. However, those who were in leadership at the time could not carry their people along. They came up with strategies and policies they believe will inure to the benefit of their citizens, but implementing those policies was a major challenge. First of all, there was the concern of ensuring that they bring development to their people. Not all the political leaders of some of these countries that had just gained independence had the ideas of what to do. And in doing so, or in most of it was try and error. They would try this policy. If it doesn't work, they try this one. And some of those didn't find favor with portions of their citizens. So when the citizens believe that what you are doing or where you are taking, the direction you are taking the country does not align with them, they come together, come up with a plan, and then oust the leadership of the political leaders. So it has been a major challenge of development. That is why that disconnect has always been there. You are in leadership, you need to bring development and help the people progress, but when the people feel they are not getting that or their lives are not changing, then they believe that no, you need to go for someone else to come. So there have been a lot of try and error in a number of African countries, all in the name of trying to make sure democracy, takes a strong foothold. But it's a challenge, and I think that they are still working on it. It's a work in progress. We wish almost all the African countries can have proper political freedom and economic development. But when you have issues of corruption creeping in and those in leadership are seen to be enjoying a certain lifestyle that the ordinary citizen is not getting, then they will take up arms and try to throw you out so they can also benefit. So that, I think, is one of the key issues that has led to the many coups we have seen in the continent.
Peace and development are interconnected. And back in the days, in the 1960s, African countries got their independence from their colonizers. But after their independence, what followed was a kind of coup and undemocratic change of government, as you interestingly explained. And of course, one of the reasons that initiated African leaders to replace the Organization of African Unity with the African Union with the quest to ensure peace and security. Peace and security was at stake after African countries got their independence in the 1960s and in the early 1970s. So based on your observation, based on your evaluation, do you think the African Union, the successor of the Organization of African Unity, is ensuring peace and security in the continent?
That's an interesting question, and I say so because the African Union, one of the pillars of the Union is to ensure that the continent is peaceful. If you imagine Africa as a country, you'd hope that it has peace and sustained peace. We have had challenges in independent countries, and yes, they are sovereign nations, but that is why we have a union which is supposed to more or less supervise or ensure that all member countries get the needed assistance, be it military, be it developmental, be it financial, so we can have a very stable, growing continent. However, like you indicated, we have been reporting a lot of coups and insecurity in various parts of the continent, and the Union has not been able to take a hold of the peace and security of the continent. And I think it is because the African Union has done more talking than taking action. They have held a lot of conferences, they will go for meetings, they go for a conference to plan another conference, but the real action is not being felt on the ground. And I think over time, they are also losing sight of a key tenet of security, which is intelligence sharing. So you hear of something in one country, it's like media people like you and I hardly hear of the African Union being proactive. So they wait, the issue gets out of hand, then they are reacting. And even today, the chair of the African Union mentioned it at the opening ceremony, where he says the Security Council of the African Union has been reactive. And I think they need to check that as quickly as they can, because people feel they can do anything, or countries feel they can do anything and go away with it, or people in individual countries can do anything and go away with it. There aren't enough sanctions, but the problem goes beyond the borders of those countries, because there are issues of refugees, women and children, and even men, get the short end of the bargain and are always at the peril of some unscrupulous or evil men who decide to take up arms, whether for freedom struggle or economic or democratic struggle. Whatever it is, security does not inure to anybody, insecurity does not inure to anybody's benefit. I remember a recent issue of Kenya, where the youth in the country were up in arms against their government. It was building up, but very little to nothing was heard from the African Union. There was no statement, they didn't take any action, and then the issue got out of hand in Kenya. Although the government in Kenya managed to, stabilize the situation, even up till now, there are still bits and pieces of tension in the country. Then there is Tanzania. We also saw that It was an election, a democratic process. It became chaotic. People were killed. There was evidence to that. It was on international media. But the AU has not done much. The president of Tanzania, we are told, is even coming for the AU summit. So when people supervise or superintend over insecurity issues in their country, they themselves are contributing to it. And I think the union needs to be up and doing. If they are minded to share intelligence and are able to follow modern ways of communication like social media, the youth in many of these countries are very active on social media, and they can pick hints from some of these places that something is happening in this country. Let's check what's happening here. Then on the back of that, they can immediately mobilize and take action to douse it before it gets out of hand. And maybe a final point I'll make is the fact that because we have had repeated coups on the continent, especially in and around West Africa, there should be a standby military force that in case diplomacy fails, they can deploy these men to go and try and de-escalate the situation. And President of Ghana, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, is taking such initiatives. As recently as about 3 days ago, or about last week, there was a meeting where he brought all the West African presidents for a security meeting because he felt that insecurity in one country is a major problem for another country. So he brought them together to look at strategies of quieting some of these issues that and try and nip it in the bud before it gets out of hand. So such initiatives can be replicated on the continental stage to ensure that not just West Africa or East or Central or Southern Africa, but the continent as a whole, through the African Union, is able to stabilize or douse some of these flames.
We can mention countries like Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and other countries that have gone through coups, and of course the African Union has taken measure on those countries. I mean, the African Union has suspended some of the countries that have gone through undemocratic change of government, and I think that is a good step that needs to be appreciated. You know, the African Union under its peace and security architecture is of course doing lots of jobs to make sure that the continent is free of violence, coups and civil wars, and that has to be recognized as far as I'm concerned. But much remains to be done. As you interestingly explained, you know, the African Union need to work its talk. You know, we have been watching, you know, enormous talks in the podiums, but you know, the African Union needs to translate its talks to, kind of tangible actions. I totally agree with that. But you know, the thing is, much of the funding of the African Union is also obtained from external bodies. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, only 30% of the funding is coming from African countries. So do you think that is also affecting the independence and influence the power of the union?
Certainly. I mean, money is the blood. Again, I'm referencing what the AU chair said today. He says money is the blood that flows and then gets things done. And so the continent certainly does need money. And there is a give and take here. If we have a stable continent, people will naturally start businesses. The development will thrive. Then the continent can get money. Because if you go to some of the countries that are struggling economically and you ask them to contribute money to the AU fund, it will be difficult. Where are they going to get it from? That is why, as a union, they are even depending on international bodies or other multilateral institutions to give them funding. So issues of funding is a major subject they need to discuss. I'm sure, like I heard in the session, they are going to be having a side meeting to talk about funding. Private institutions and private bodies on the continent are doing well. We can rope them in to see how they can also support some of these initiatives undertaken by the AU, where, for instance, if there's a peace and security summit or there is a peace and security activity in any country, funding will be easy, you know, or there is a reliable source of fund that they can depend on to execute their mandate. So, I mean, you cannot talk about peace without the requisite assistance when it comes to funding and financing. And if we can find alternative ways, not just asking member states to pay, but if there are alternative ways we can generate these sources of funding. It is early days. It's about time that we start exploring those options as well.
You have been saying that the president of Ghana, John Dramani Mahama, is trying to bring about peace and stability in that region of Africa, in the West Africa, because that region is experiencing unprecedented coups and undemocratic change of government. And of course, the problem of the neighbor is going to be the problem of Ghana. So it's great that the president of Ghana, John Dramani Mahama, is taking that initiative. The thing is, Ghana is one of the most stable countries in West Africa. Why is so? What makes Ghana such a stable country while many of its neighbors are grappling with kinds of coup and insecurity?
Well, I would largely, first of all, I want to say it's by the grace of God. God has been very helpful to Ghana. Our constitution as a country is one thing that almost everybody respects. We try to respect the constitution because that is what governs the country or the citizens. And so irrespective of the change in government, usually during campaigns there's a lot of acrimony and tension. But I think Ghanaians generally love peace. We have seen what's happening around us. We have actually had similar situations of neighbors. And so there is the concern that if we are not careful as a people, some of these evil things will befall us. So we have been deliberate in our policy implementation. Every government that comes into power ensures that they follow from what the previous government did so that funds or state money is not wasted. For instance, one government comes and decides to build a hospital. They get halfway and then they are voted out. The new government is conscious of the fact that a hospital is going to be important to everybody, not just the government that was in power. So other developmental projects like schools, roads, different infrastructure, whenever a government starts it and is able to convince the people that this is for your good, a new government comes and they are mandated to continue. And I think that is one of the things that I can confidently say is helping us as a people. We are reducing our wastage, and the current government is ensuring that they stay within budget. Now, money and corruption are usually, going hand in hand. So although people come into power and they have the resources available to them, there is a consciousness of making sure that these monies or these resources that have been handed to you is not for you. You have just been given to help the people and ensure that you better the lives of your citizens. So because of that consciousness and the concern these leaders have for the citizens, I think that is largely one of the reasons why we have been a stable country. The challenge we've seen in the sub-region stems from, like we indicated earlier, issues of development. And when there is lack of development, insecurity creeps in. And we are also developing at a very steady rate. International bodies, the World Bank, the IMF, have all looked at Ghana and said that it is an example in a very unstable region, for which reason they are willing to support Ghana in almost every major decision we are taking. And I think that on the back of that, we are likely to make even more progress, God being our help.
Thank you so much for sharing your in-depth knowledge and experience regarding some matters and issues of Africa. I really would like to have more time with you to cover more African issues, but we are restricted by time. Thank you so much for your time.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
That was my fascinating interview with one seasoned journalist from Ghana. Hope you enjoyed the interview. Many thanks for watching, and please do stay with the Pulse of Africa.